I need to tell you what happened on the night of October the 14th, because if I don't tell someone, I think it will keep happening to me over and over in my head until it finally finishes the job. My name doesn't matter. What matters is the road and the gas station and the voice that came out of the radio after the station went dead. I was driving from Ohio to my sister's place in West Virginia, taking the back roads because my GPS kept losing signal and because, honestly, I liked the quiet. Route 9 cuts through about 40 miles of nothing. Cornfields gone brown and brittle with the season, a few leaning barns, telephone poles standing like crosses against a sky the color of old bruises. It was just past 9 at night, the kind of dark that swallows your headlights instead of bending around them. The radio had been playing an oldies station out of Marietta, something with a lot of tambourine in it. And then, without any warning, it dropped into static. I tapped the dial. Static. I scanned up and down the whole band. Nothing but that low hiss, like the sound of rain falling on a roof very far away. I remember thinking that was strange, because static usually has texture to it, little pops and crackles, and this one was smooth, almost breathing. I should have just turned the radio off. I want you to understand that clearly, because that's the moment where I could have stopped everything that came after. But I didn't turn it off. I turned it up, actually, because underneath the static, I thought I heard something. A voice, very faint, saying my name. Now, I want to be honest with you. I've never believed in ghosts. I'm the kind of person who watches horror movies and laughs at the characters who go into the basement. So when I heard my name in that static, my first thought wasn't fear, it was curiosity. The stupid kind of curiosity that gets people written about in newspapers. I leaned toward the dashboard, one hand still on the wheel, straining to hear it again. And there it was, clearer this time. A voice that sounded exactly like my mother's voice, except my mother has been dead for 6 years. She said, "Turn around, honey. You're going the wrong way." I want to tell you I slammed on the brakes, that I had the sense to pull over and call someone. But the truth is, I just kept driving. Faster now, my knuckles white on the wheel, telling myself it was some kind of ham radio prank, some trucker messing with frequencies, some rational explanation that my brain kept manufacturing because the alternative was too big to hold. The static kept hissing. Every few seconds, that voice, my mother's voice, soft and patient the way she used to talk to me when I was little and scared of thunderstorms. "Turn around, honey. You're going the wrong way. Turn around." Up ahead, I saw a light. A gas station, one of those old single-pump places with a lit sign that said open in red letters, one of the letters flickering so it read open and then O-N and then open again. I pulled in. I don't know why. Maybe I thought a real, solid, fluorescent-lit place with a bored teenager behind the counter would break whatever spell the dark road had put on me. I parked under the awning, and the second I put the car in park, the radio cut off entirely. Not static, silence. A silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I sat there for a long moment, just breathing, telling myself it was nothing, that I was tired, that 8 hours on the road does strange things to a person's mind. Then I got out. The gas station was one of those places you find only on roads like Route 9, roads that time seems to have forgotten to update. The pumps were the old kind with the spinning numbers instead of digital screens. The windows were fogged with a greasy yellow light. Moths beat themselves senseless against the glass. I went inside more to use the bathroom and buy a coffee than anything else. Some part of me desperate to just stand in a lit room with another human being for 5 minutes. The bell over the door rang a thin, tired little chime. Behind the counter sat a man, maybe 60, wearing a flannel shirt buttoned all the way to the collar despite the warmth of the room. He didn't look up right away. When he did, his eyes moved over me slowly, the way you'd look at a bruise to see how bad it was. "Long way from anywhere," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel under a boot. "Just passing through. Is your radio station out around here? I was getting nothing but static the last 20 minutes. He went very still. Not the stillness of someone who didn't hear you, but the stillness of someone who heard you and wished they hadn't. "You hear anything in that static? Anything that sounded like talking?" I remember the cold that went through me at that question, because I hadn't told him about the voice. I hadn't said a word about it. "Why do you ask that?" I said, and it wasn't really a question, more like a demand dressed up as one. He looked at me for a long time, and then he reached under the counter and set down an old cassette recorder, the kind with big square buttons, scratched and yellowed with age. "Route 9's got a stretch, about 6 miles back the way you came, right where the road bends past the old Hollis farm. Cell towers don't reach it, radio don't reach it either, not normal radio anyway, but something reaches it. Been that way long as I've run this station, and long before that too, if you believe the old-timers." "Something reaches it," I repeated. "Folks call it different things. My granddad called it the beckoning. Said it started back in the 30s after the Hollis family disappeared. All 6 of them, gone in one night, doors unlocked, supper still warm on the table, and never found. After that, people started saying that stretch of road would call out to travelers passing through at night, use a voice they trusted, a voice they missed, and tell them to turn around." He tapped the counter twice, like punctuating a sentence. "Only it don't mean turn around and go back the way you came. It means something else." "What does it mean?" I said, and my mouth had gone dry as chalk. "It means turn the car around right there on the road and drive back into that stretch, right into the dark part where the trees close in overhead. Nobody who's done it has ever come back out. 6 people, far as anyone can count, over the years. Maybe more nobody knows about." I laughed. I actually laughed, a short, ugly, frightened sound, because my mind was trying to reject what I was hearing, trying to file it under folklore, under small-town legend, under the kind of story gas station clerks tell bored travelers for fun. "That's a good story," I said. He didn't smile. "It ain't a story to the 6 people missing a headstone," he said. "You said you heard something in that static. What'd it sound like?" I didn't want to answer him, but something about the flat, tired honesty in his face made the lie stick in my throat. "It sounded like my mother," I said. "She's been dead 6 years." He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something he already knew and had hoped right up until the last second that he wouldn't have to know. "Then I'd stay right here a while. Coffee's fresh, bathrooms around back, and whatever you do, don't get back on that road tonight. Wait till first light. It don't work in daylight, never has." I want to tell you that I listened to him, that I sat in that gas station all night drinking bad coffee and waiting for the sun, and that this story ends with me driving home safe the next morning with a strange tale to tell at dinner parties. But that isn't what happened, and I think you already know that. Because if it had ended that way, I wouldn't feel this need clawing at the inside of my chest to tell someone before it's too late. I called my sister. I remember that clearly. I stood in the parking lot under that flickering open sign, and I called her. And she picked up on the second ring, sounding exactly like herself. A little annoyed, a little sleepy, asking why I was calling so late. We talked for maybe 10 minutes. She told me about her new apartment, about a coworker she couldn't stand, about the dog next door that wouldn't stop barking. Normal things, real things. And by the end of that call, I felt foolish. I felt like a grown adult who had let an old man's ghost story and a bad radio signal turn him into a frightened child. I told her I loved her, and I got back in my car. And I told myself the smart thing to do was drive back the way I'd come, back toward the interstate, back toward the lit and busy and ordinary world, and find another route to her place in the morning. The old man watched me from the window as I pulled out. I saw him mouth something. I think it was, "Wait." I didn't wait. The road back was worse in the dark somehow, worse than it had been driving toward the station. The cornfields on either side had gone from brown to black, and the moon, which had been fat and low earlier in the night, had slipped behind a wall of cloud that hadn't been there an hour before. I turned the radio on out of habit, the way your hand reaches for a light switch in a room you've walked through 1,000 times. Static, smooth, and even, like breathing. I should have turned it off. I keep saying that, don't I? I should have turned it off, but it's easy to say that now, sitting somewhere safe, telling this story after the fact. In the moment, on that road, with the dark pressing flat against the windows like a hand, some part of me needed to hear it again, needed to know if it would still sound like her. It did. Clearer than before. So clear I could hear the small catch in her breath she used to get when she was worried about me. The same catch I heard the day I told her I was moving 3 states away for a job. The same catch I heard in the hospital during the last conversation we ever had. "You didn't listen," she said. "Turn around, honey. You're going the wrong way. Turn around, right here, right now, before it's too late." And I want you to understand something about grief, something that maybe you already know if you've lost somebody the way I lost her. Grief doesn't go away. It just gets quiet. It waits. And when you hear a voice that sounds exactly like the person you've missed every single day for 6 years, something underneath your rational mind, something older and hungrier than reason, reaches for it the way a drowning man reaches for anything floating on the surface of the water. I didn't decide to turn the wheel. My hands did it before the rest of me caught up. The car swung around in the middle of that empty road, tires screaming against the asphalt, and I was driving back the way I'd just come, back toward the bend by the old Hollis farm, back into the stretch the gas station man had warned me about. The trees on either side seemed to lean in as I drove, their bare branches knitting together overhead like fingers lacing shut, and the headlights, which should have been cutting a clean, bright path in front of me, seemed to dim, to thicken, like I was driving through something with a texture, something almost like fog, but heavier, wetter, alive. The static on the radio grew louder. Not just my mother's voice, now other voices too, layered underneath hers, a whole choir of them, some crying, some laughing, one of them a child's voice, singing a nursery rhyme in a flat, wrong key. I remember screaming at the radio to stop, slamming my hand against the dashboard, and the voices didn't stop. They just got closer together, closer to my ear, like the car itself had shrunk and they were all sitting right beside me in the dark. Up ahead, in the wash of my dimming headlights, I saw the old Hollis farmhouse. I hadn't noticed it on the way out, hidden as it was behind a curtain of dead trees, but now it stood there, plain as anything. Windows black, porch sagging, front door standing wide open, even though there wasn't a soul who could have opened it. And in that doorway, I swear to you, I saw shapes. 6 of them. Standing very still, the way people stand when they've been waiting a very long time and have nowhere else they need to be. My car slowed down on its own. The engine didn't die, the wheel didn't fight me, but the whole vehicle simply lost its will to keep moving forward, the way a person's legs give out from exhaustion. I was maybe 200 feet from that porch, close enough to see that the shapes in the doorway weren't quite the right proportions, arms a little too long, heads tilted at angles that necks don't really allow. Close enough to hear, over the radio static, over the choir of borrowed voices, a low humming sound coming from the house itself. A sound like a refrigerator, like electricity, like something enormous and patient, breathing very slowly. And then my mother's voice, right beside my ear now, not through the radio at all anymore, said, "You came home." I don't remember deciding to reverse. I don't remember my foot finding the brake and then the gas, or my hands cranking the wheel hard to the left, or the horrible scraping sound as my back bumper caught on something in the ditch, something that felt, for just a second, like it was holding on. I don't remember most of the next 6 miles at all. What I remember is the gas station sign, open, O-E-N, open, swimming up out of the dark like a lighthouse, and the old man standing outside in his flannel shirt with a shotgun loose in one hand, not aimed at anything, just held, the way you hold something for comfort more than for use. He didn't ask me what happened. He just said, "Get inside," and I did, and I sat on an overturned milk crate behind his counter until the sky in the east began to turn the color of a fresh bruise, fading to yellow, and only then did my hands stop shaking enough to hold the coffee he'd poured me hours before, gone cold, untouched, forgotten. He told me, as the sun came up, that I was lucky, that most people who turn around on that stretch don't make it back out, that something about hearing that voice call me a second time right at my ear instead of through the static meant I'd gotten closer to the house than almost anyone he'd heard of surviving. He didn't explain it beyond that. I don't think he could. I don't think anyone can. I drove the rest of the way to my sister's the next morning in full daylight on the interstate, adding 2 hours to my trip and not caring one bit. When I got there and hugged her, really hugged her, felt her real arms and her real heartbeat, I didn't tell her what had happened. I still haven't told her. I'm not sure I ever will. Because how do you tell someone you love that the thing wearing your dead mother's voice almost had you? That it knew exactly which words would make your hands turn a steering wheel against every ounce of sense you had left? I looked it up later. The Hollis family, the disappearance from the 1930s. There's barely anything online. A short newspaper clipping, yellowed and scanned poorly, mentioning a family of 6 vanishing from their farmhouse on Route 9 with no sign of struggle, supper still on the table. The article ends with a line from the sheriff at the time, who apparently told reporters, quote, that the family had simply walked off into the night and would likely turn up somewhere safe. They never did. Not one of them. I don't drive Route 9 anymore. I go the long way now, even if it costs me an extra hour, even if my GPS complains about it the whole time. And if you ever find yourself on a back road at night and your radio drops into a static that sounds a little too smooth, a little too much like breathing, and underneath it you hear a voice you love, a voice you've missed, telling you gently that you're going the wrong way and that you should turn around, I am begging you, with everything left in me, do not listen. Keep driving. Keep your eyes on the road ahead of you, no matter what it says, no matter how much it sounds like home. Because there are things out there in the dark stretches of this country that have learned exactly how grief works, exactly how much a person will give up just for one more sound of a voice they lost. And they are patient, and they are old, and they are always listening for the next car to slow down.